welcome to an interview with Orsola De Castro. She's one of the founding members of the Fashion Revolution. And as I am green, as you can see, I am extremely looking forward to chatting to her. Orsola, thank you very much for joining us and to talk to all the female and especially mumpreneurs out there.
Thank you for calling me.
First of all, can you tell me a little bit more about your journey, how you came to do the job that you are doing right now?
Well, I started out as a designer, so I started my own label from somewhere in 1997, and it's all about reusing and recuperating clothes, and it started quite small and quite poetic, and it ended up becoming quite big and quite successful. So I went from customizing old cashmere jumpers and basically anything that I could find to actually scouring factories for what we now call pre-consumer waste. So anything from cutting room, offcuts from the floor, to end of rolls, to remnants, damaged rolls, etc. So that was really my beginning, truly a very creative start, as rooted in fashion as possible. As a result of this, I was an exhibitor at London Fashion Week, and in 2006, my partner and I were asked by the British Fashion Council if we could start the first sort of design-led sustainable fashion area within London Fashion Week, and Estetica was born. Again, that was a huge success. I mean, it's still internationally renowned as one of the pioneering areas in terms of showcasing the best of sustainability within design. Unfortunately, it closed last February, but we're redesigning it, so watch this space. And through Estetica, I actually met Carrie Summers, who originally had the idea for Fashion Revolution in 2013 as a result of the Rana Plaza disaster. When the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, I think the whole community felt very deeply powerless, but at the same time as if we'd all predicted. We'd all known that such a tragedy was bound to happen at some point or another. And Carrie called me up, literally, she was having a bath, she had this great idea, and she called me saying, let's start let's start Fashion Revolution. And I immediately said yes. And so what originally we were kind of debating, what will it look like? Would it be an event raising funds and so on and so forth, has turned into a huge campaign. We are now in 78 countries worldwide. We've just done our second year on the 24th of April, the anniversary of the Rana Plaza. And the success this year was insane. We had, literally something like 63 million unique users and, numbers that hardly make sense. 124 million impressions on Twitter and Instagram alone. We had people from Stella McCartney to Italian film director Bernardo Bertolucci taking part. And what we do is quite simple. We ask the consumer to show their label, so either like this or turning their clothes inside out for maximum effect, and ask the brands who made my clothes, and then share that through the social media. And it is about really regaining, a connection throughout the fashion and textile supply chain, something which, particularly in my case, having worked in the fashion industry for nearly 20 years, I know that it's certainly something that's been lost.
So we're going to come back to the very end, which obviously is happening now and is massively exciting. But if I can just take you back to the very beginning, it wasn't a very big thing to be conscious of reusing things back before the turn of the century. What made you do that?
It wasn't a very big thing somehow in terms of thinking and sustainability, because the industry hadn't yet been exposed for the damage it was doing and the impact it was creating. But in terms of design, actually in London, it was quite big. When I started in 97, there were brands that were really experimenting with vintage, with reusing, not as a environmental statement, but as a design statement. And that's how I originate. My whole journey, as I mentioned before, comes from the creativity rather than the, of course I've now become, a fashion activist, but I really was a fashion designer. And so brands such as Preen, who are immensely successful now, or Jessica Ogden, Krista Davis, Cassandra Postema, these brands in 1997 were quite well known. And we were experimenting with using vintage, with customizing, as I said, not because we imagined that it was ever going to be a tool to change the world, but using it as a kind of poetic and creative design tool to talk about fashion in a different way.
I understand. And then somewhere along this journey, you became a mum.
No, I already was a mum.
I've
been a mum long before I ever became a woman. I have been a mum all my life. I became a mum quite deliberately at 18.
Okay.
And I have 4 children. So I'm actually a grandmother as well.
Oh, wow.
I have a 30-year-old daughter. Thank you. I have a 30-year-old daughter, and who is the one that has produced me the most delicious grandson. And then I have a 25-year-old daughter, and then I have a 15-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. So my being a mother has been something that has, peppered with delight my entire career. And I don't believe that I could ever have had a career had I not been a mum first.
Okay, I've got two questions to ask you. As a mum myself, and as somebody who's very, very interested and vested in sustainable and ethical and thought out living. The first one is it's very important, sort of deep, heavy issues that you deliberately involve. I mean, obviously it sort of chose you, but you are very deliberately choosing as well to be inside this milieu where these, very deep issues and things are at stake. And how do you balance that with children, because children are not really, they're not made to be very deeply thoughtful all the time. Does it affect your relationship with them at all?
I really am good at telling stories. So I always made anything, again, it's also about language. We call it ethical, but I would probably have called it things like efficient and common sense before that. So it's easier to tell that story that way. And I've never made it about it being less. I always made it about being more. I mean, the way that I do my work is that I get together a whole lot of bits and pieces of fabric and put them together. And it sounds quite limiting to a designer, but to me, that limitation is actually the challenge, and it's actually what makes it creative. So when I talk to my children about buying stuff, I don't say, oh, no, you can't buy that, because that is not the right thing to buy. I tell them about other ways of buying and enjoying things, about longing. We sort of really play with desire in my family. I always tell that, if you have something straight away, that's boring. You have to really test how much you love something. And if you're completely in love with it, 5 or 6 or 9 months later, then you're truly going to enjoy it so much more. So I've never really seen it as a limitation, and I don't think they have either. I'm also, to be honest with you, obviously I'm a creative soul, and I've been very lucky that all of my children are creative. I mean, for instance, to give you the example of my son, I was terrified. I just absolutely couldn't buy him presents at all. I have no affinity with trains or planes or transformers, and thank God nor does he. The best present you could give him was a cardboard box and some Sharpies, and and elastics and things like that. So obviously we encourage that in the family, and by making exhibitions of all the stuff that they made. But genuinely our journey in terms of not being a consuming family, but being a creating family, has been a joy to watch and a joy to participate, and very much part of an ongoing game.
It's a joy to listen to, even. It's very inspiring. Ursula, how do you find that there are places where you feel pulled between your career and your family life, or do you manage the balance quite easily?
No, of course I do. I mean, I don't believe that there is any working mum that doesn't. In my case, it's actually progressing, because in a way, when my older daughters were small, my life was very much still dedicated to the label. So I would be at home in this studio full of mess and fabrics and scissors and stuff. And so, obviously they were right in there with me. I mean, the worst that could happen is that they would get pricked by a pin.
Yeah.
So, it was less complicated. With my younger children, as my career takes off, yes, of course I feel pulled. I mean, I travel, I'm not there. I am super blessed that my husband, the father of my two youngest children, is completely present. I mean, I have to say, I'm the luckiest mother in the world. With my two youngest children, I don't think I've done one school run. He does them all. I've been so traumatized by being a mother when I was 18 and sort of having to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning that, the first thing I said when I met him and we discussed having a family, I said, I am never getting up early again in the morning. I'll do nights, but I'm never doing a school run ever again in the morning. And
he listened.
It was a deal worth making. I do a hell of a lot of other things, but I don't do that. And so obviously we share the load a lot. Also, in my case, I have my daughters, my elder daughters, who help hugely with their younger siblings. And, the rest is, of course I'm torn. Of course I'm aware that my career takes me away from my children. And the only thing that I can say is that when I spoke about it with my elder daughters and I said, has this ever been a problem? Their reply was very lovely and very encouraging. They said to me, yes, of course we missed you, but we also inherited your work ethics. And this is an important thing to have in life.
Yeah.
I do work a lot, but I also love what I do enormously. What I do is also something that can be considered somehow of help to others, and therefore of importance to others. And so, although I know that my children miss me, I also know, or at least they tell me, they may be lying, but they do tell me that they're proud of what I do, and they enjoy, my success, and they enjoy knowing that when I'm away, they can see me on Instagram or on Twitter,
yes,
doing all
it is
these
easier these days, isn't it?
So it is.
And
so,
becoming a grandmother, does that make it more? Is that different again, or?
Worst grandmother in the world. Absolutely. No way that I can potentially give any excuse on that. By the time my grandson was born, I had only just stopped changing nappies of my baby. I mean, the idea of sleepless night and smelly nappies was so unappealing at that stage. But fortunately, my daughter, therefore his mum, is super present and, wonderful mother. This is the other great thing about evolution, I think we become, our children become better than we are.
Yeah.
So my daughter, I think, is a way better mother than I ever was. So it works brilliantly. Plus, I have the added value that, the one that I had just stopped changing nappies of, therefore my youngest daughter, now looks after my grandson, all the time. So effectively, I'm quite an invisible grandmother. Of course, I'm there. I'm a strong presence.
Yes.
But I do, I've made it very easy for myself with it.
Well, fantastic. I'm very happy to know that the future of sustainable fashion is in very organised hands. And it's been so lovely talking to you. I wish we could have a whole afternoon to talk. Ursula, thank you so much. And we can still take the photographs and ask who made our clothes, right?
You should, please do. It's a fun thing to do with a really, really important message. And most of all, it's beginning to yield results. We are starting to get the replies.
Well, we'll stick the links.
Thanks so much
we'll add the links. No, it's fantastic. We'll add the links to this video and and we'll get out there and ask the questions. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Nice to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.